My name is Warren Bobrow, and I've written a book called Cannabis Cocktails. What I'm trying to do here is something that hasn't been done before. People have written books about all different things in cocktail mixology, but they haven't written a book on mixology with cannabis yet. And so I wanted to take you through some of the basic means that I determined to create this book called Cannabis Cocktails, which we will be giving away. How are we doing this, Derrick? The Cannabis Cocktails. We're giving away a copy of my book. I don't know if it's signed or something.
After the shakeup?
After the shakeup.
Go to the Tales 365 Facebook page and you can enter for a chance to win.
Yes, Derrick from Common Man Cocktails. Thank you.
Yep.
So I wrote a book called Cannabis Cocktails, Mocktails and Tonics. And what I tried to do is not create the typical stoner book, which is, there are plenty of them out there on the market, but I wanted to kind of unleash the power of the early apothecary. And when I was down in New Orleans last year at Tales of the Cocktail, I did a book signing at the Apothecary Museum, and I was really surprised to see a setup right next to me showing early apothecary ingredients and how they're used in the early apothecary, and I discovered that they used cannabis. And that got my brain thinking, and I thought, you know what, if they were using cannabis back in the late 1800s, early 1900s in the early apothecary, there had to have been something to it. Not all the things that they made in the apothecary had medicinal value. A lot of it was what we call snake oil, but some of it did actually work. And what I'm doing over here is a little fast forwarding. I'm infusing some cannabis in some beautiful Bar Hill gin. I'm going to make a cocktail with it a little later. And then I have a portion of nice high quality weeds here, cannabis, that I'm going to decarb. I was going to decarb. I decarbed the portion that was right here, and it's in the container. But this gives you an idea that everything should be measured out by weight and an amount. And usually it's I use about between 7 and 14 grams per bottle of liquor. So what I wanted to try to accomplish was how you make the product psychoactive, and that would be the feeling that you get when you would either smoke marijuana or smoke cannabis or even eat it in an edible. And not everyone wants to eat pot brownies all day. So what I tried to do is not confuse the issue, but I wanted to release the psychoactive properties of the cannabis and infuse it into bourbon whiskey in this case, or I have a little container of gin here infusing. And I wanted to create a cocktail with it, actually 2 cocktails. But the idea with the decarbing is to release the molecule A from THC. I'm not a scientist, I can't tell you exactly what that means, but I can tell you it gives you that feeling that you're looking for when you want to have the good feeling that's involved with making a cannabis cocktail. But why cannabis? Why is cannabis more important than, say, any of the other herbs or spices that we use in the cocktail lounge? Well, it's every bit as important as the herbs and spices that you use in a cocktail lounge. And I have a selection of cocktail bitters in front of me. Some of them may or may not have cannabis in them. I can't tell you that. But I can tell you that there's the potential for that use, and it would add a lot of flavor and balance and aromatics and all the different things that we look for in a craft cocktail. So I don't have a microwave down here, but I was going to be using a microwave for the decarb, but I'm going to give you the approximation. You would take a portion of the cannabis and you put it into a container, a microwave-proof container, like this one. And you put it inside and then nuke this in the microwave. I love using a microwave because it has a lot of power to it, and it does your job very quickly. There are a couple different methods of doing it, but I'm going to tell you about the microwave one first. You would put it in a microwave-proof container, perhaps wrap it in what we call a turkey roasting bag. I did have one here, but that's okay. And that would hold in all the flavors and all the aromas. It keeps your entire house from smelling like a weed factory. And then you nuke it for 1.5 minutes, 3 times. So what that does is it decarbs the cannabis and makes it active. after it goes into the decarb process, you would charge it. And I learned this from a guy named Dave Arnold. I saw that he was infusing herbs. I thought, why couldn't you infuse cannabis? I would put that decarbed cannabis inside my whippet container, my ISI, with liquor, and it would go into a double boiler, which I have an induction burner here. Very important to not use gas. It's extremely important not to use a gas stove. Alcohol is extremely flammable. You can be the person that they remember when you blow up your whole house forever. So I always use the induction or an electric cooktop. This is a portion of gin that has decarbed cannabis in it, and it infuses in the double boiler for about 45 minutes to an hour, and it makes a really, really nice product at the end. Do you have to decarb? Not necessarily. For some of the health benefits, people don't decarb at all, and they just put the cannabis directly into their liquor, and what they turn out to be having is a soupy mess. It doesn't have any of the flavor, it doesn't have any of the color, and it doesn't have any of the intensity. The other method that I learned about and that I wrote about in my book, was the decarb method by using heat. And you would do that in a toaster oven or a regular oven on a toaster plate or on some type of container that you would close up to keep the valuable terpenes, which are the aromatics in the bottle or in the cannabis. And then what would happen is you would cook it for about 240 degrees for an hour to release those positive parts of the cannabis, which allows it to be infused. And you can infuse all different types of things. In my book, I infused coconut water, I infused coconut milk, I infused butter, I infused oils, I infused all different liquors. I did bitters, I did shrubs, I did tonics. How are we doing here? Doing okay?
Yep.
We're having a lot of fun here.
Do you want to do questions and answers during the middle of the fluidly or at the end?
I would love to answer some questions. I see there's some questions there. I can't really read them. Okay, explain the term decarb. That's a great question. Decarbing is releasing the molecule A from THC, which makes the cannabis active. What it means to be active is it gives you that feeling that people accompany with smoking marijuana or enjoying a cocktail that's made with it. So you get a different feeling. I can't tell you what that feeling is because it changes from person to person, but it definitely is the pleasurable aspect of using cannabis in a mixed drink.
Do you want me to ask you the
You
next
asked me
question?
the next question. Certainly.
The next one was, are there ways to infuse without using the double boiler?
Are there ways to infuse without using a double boiler? Yes. If you don't have a double boiler at your disposal and only an oven, you can do this in the oven, but make sure it's not a gas oven and it's an electric oven. I haven't really experimented with that method, and I don't recommend it until you really know what you're doing, because there's nothing worse than an explosion with alcohol. And that's why we're doing our double boiler in open containers, away from an open flame, using an induction cooktop. These are only about $50 or $100. They're not very expensive.
I think I paid $60 for that.
$60 for that. It's not very expensive to make sure that you're not blowing up your house and your neighbor's house as well.
Why use a cracker in a double boiler rather than just a beaker?
I'm using a beaker. I don't want to have the liquid in constant contact with, even though it's in glass, but I don't want it to be, I don't want it to get wet. I like having just the steam. It's a little more controllable. Experimentation is everything in this, and I'm not saying that my way is the only way. There are many different ways. I also do a decarb in a sous vide. I do it in in plastic and hold it underwater at 212 degrees for about 2 hours, and it decarbs that way, and then you don't have to have any smell whatsoever. But sometimes what happens is if you do a decarb and you live in an apartment, make sure you do it with all the windows open, because your house is going to smell very suspect.
Really?
Questions again?
Nope, you're good to go for now.
Good for now.
Yep.
Okay, so the next thing that we would do is you would put your decarbed cannabis inside the ISI. You would charge it twice with the the nitrous oxide, And what that's supposed to do, from what I learned, is it micro-encapsulates the THC into each of the bits of alcohol. And you would never fill this up more than 0.5 liters so it doesn't explode again. And it's supposed to infuse the cannabis into the THC into the liquor at a very intense rate, because it's that forcing of the nitrous oxide into the alcohol with the herbs, which creates the flavor. And then to activate it, it needs to be physically cooked in just boiling water for about an hour. And I really like that method, and it gives me a very, a really nice end result. So why cannabis? Why cannabis? Cannabis is something that people have used for healing purposes. They use it for relaxation purposes. I think there's 400 some odd different things that it's supposed to alleviate. I can't tell you that cannabis is going to cure all of your ills, but I can tell you that it's certainly going to make someone feel better no matter what they do. Maybe it's my gnome Klaus, I'm not quite sure. But there's a lot of things that you can do with it as a cocktail ingredient. So one of the things that I was going to do was I was going to take some of the barrel bourbon that I infused with cannabis, and I was going to make a little bit of like a Moscow Mule with a little bit of ginger beer. So let's get a little bit of ice here.
Need a cut line?
What's that?
You need a cut line?
Yeah, I would love a couple of cut limes. That'd be great.
Okay.
So I'm going to put some cubes in here. Something that's very important to stress, that when you're making a cannabis cocktail, when you're making cannabis cocktails, you don't want to make them too strong, because there is something in there that's active. So I think measurement is all very, very important. And this cocktail I'm going to do with about, I don't know, an ounce of the infused barrel bourbon whiskey. And it's, I'm kind of working a little bit far away from the menu, but I'm going to use a little bit of the Fruitations pure bottled grapefruit, which is a beautiful little product. And I do have permission to use it with cannabis, which is nice.
How much lime do you need?
Just a couple slices of lime. So I'm going to stir that up together, pour it over the ice, close it up, give it a nice little shake. Beautiful thing. Look at that, a Moscow Mule mug.
I figure if you're going to do it, you got to go
all the way. And are these available here at Common Man Cocktails?
You can get those at awesomedrinks.com.
Awesomedrinks.com, there it is. So we're pouring this is the base of the mule into the Moscow Mule cup. And then I've got a little bit of fresh lime, beautifully cut by my intrepid team back there. Squeeze some of that in here. And that ginger beer is nearby. I'd love to have one of those ginger beers.
I guess.
So you see, there's really no mumbo jumbo here. I'm just using ingredients that may or may not be charged with cannabis. You can make any of the cocktails in my book with it or without it. It's okay. I would love a ginger beer.
Still,
yeah. I don't know. Maybe we could always do it with the seltzer water.
No,
that'd be fun too.
I just thought I had one right here.
Ah, there it is. The ginger beer. Thank you. So we're going to add the ginger beer to the cocktail.
And yes, Warren, you could get that at the same place.
Okay, and I'm going to finish it off with some bitters. Let's see. I took some bitter end Moroccan bitters recently, and I did some infusing with them. So I'm going to put a couple drops of that on top. So you're going to get some different layers of flavor. And there it is. It's a sort of a Moscow Mule with barrel bourbon whiskey, Q ginger beer, and bitter end Moroccan bitters that have been slightly tweaked.
Do we get to drink
There you go. You get to drink it. You get to tell me what it tastes like.
Ian, where are you going?
That should be a pretty good cocktail. And it'll have nice flavors. It'll have nice aromas.
It has
It has sort of an herbal flavor. It kind of tastes like
but near the end, after couple of sips, when you get that spicy ginger, it's not all just spicy ginger.
It's spicy ginger and the cannabis
like
flavor.
An herbal,
or like an herbal flavor, like why we use bitters in cocktails to add balance and add depth. And we like doing things like that. Let me taste one of those.
You want more, right?
I just want to have a little taste of that.
While you're tasting it, I got a question for you.
That's a delicious, delicious drink. I recommend this to anyone, especially someone who's a neophyte like myself.
A what?
A neophyte.
How about direct infusion into the spirit right after decarbing in the microwave?
Yeah,
is heat necessary?
Heat is necessary to do the infusion, yes. Otherwise, it'll just be decarb cannabis sitting in a solution. It has to be physically infused, and that happens by heat. And the temperature that I recommend doing it, that I found in my experimentation that worked best, was approximately 160 degrees Fahrenheit, and the water should be approximately 212. And then if it gets too hot, you can just remove it from the water, let it cool a little bit, and then it goes back in again. So it's about 45 minutes to an hour. I think that's probably about time now for that one.
Yeah, that's right.
That's right on time. So I'm going to take this infusion. I've got this beautiful little jelly bag here, which I love. And it makes my life a lot easier. And I stick it right into the right into a Boston shaker. I'm going to take the Bar Hill gin, or the gin that I have, and pour it into this jelly bag. There it is.
Hard to throw.
It's hot. That's why I have a glove here, but I really wasn't paying attention.
Put your cell phone on it.
Right, my cell phone is on it, which is usual. So I've got this glove which came with my magical butter machine, which is something I also have, but we're not using it today. So we've got the weeds, putting it into the infusion. Get all that good stuff out of there. And now I squeeze it to get as much of the liquid out as possible. You don't want to get this on your skin. If you get it on your skin, you could potentially take too much of it at any given time. And if you overdose on cannabis, you'll know what I'm talking about. It's a bad feeling. It's not something that's going to kill you necessarily, but you're not going to feel very good. So my friend Jerry Whiting, who wrote the intro and foreword to my book, told me that if you drink down a glass of freshly squeezed lemon juice and eat about 3 or 4 peppercorns, that bad feeling that you get when sometimes you take too much, you mix too much liquor and cannabis, it can happen. And you'll know it when it hits you, and it won't feel good. But if you keep it in mind that the secret is to drink fresh lemon juice and peppercorns, what that does is it mimics the terpenes in the cannabis, and it counteracts it. So I got almost all the liquid out of here now. There's a nice portion left. It has a beautiful color to it. And let's see, that actually tasted pretty good on my tongue. Here, let me take that. So I'm going to pour this infused liquid, which is kind of brownish color, because I decarbed a little bit too much, I think, but I don't know. Let's see. So here it is. There's the. Normally I wouldn't do things in gin again, because the color is pretty rambunctious. It's dark. I would run this through like 1 or 2 coffee filters. But the flavor's all there, and it's going to be quite amazing because I'm going to mix up a little gin and tonic of sorts. So let me get some more ice here. Do we have any more questions or anything fun?
Well, let's answer this one first. What kind of tasting notes and aroma does it add?
It adds very green tasting notes and green aromas, like the smell of cannabis. And I find that to be quite beguiling. I like that smell. It adds depth, it adds color, it adds dimension, and it's an unknown cocktail ingredient that people just don't know anything about because there's certain legality problems, perhaps. I'm going to use a little Royal Rose simple syrup with 3 chilies. So this is poblano, ancho and jalapeno chili. So that's going to add a little, in about 2 seconds. If I shake it up with that on there, it's going to be a big mess.
I just wasn't sure if it was one of the key ingredients to your next madness.
It is my madness.
Speaking of that, somebody asked, what is your favorite recipe in the book?
My favorite recipe in the book is probably one of the hot buttered rums with canna butter, and it's just a delicious drink. So this is going to be the base of the gin and tonic with a little bit of royal road simple syrup with 3 chilies. Okay, that's our base. We got one of those. Actually, you know what? I'm going to do this in a coupe.
You want a coupe?
Yeah, I'm going to do it in a coupe. I've got the coupe right here.
You got the size.
I've got the size. So here's my coupe. Well, we could say. So here's the little coupe. You can see the greenery in there. Add a little bit of Q tonic water. Gets this beautiful milky color when you add water to it, or of any kind. And then one of those little fresh lime squeezes here. And if you're feeling really creative, you could probably garnish it with a little piece of weed on it. I probably wouldn't. I don't know. Maybe I was going to take a little bit of overproof rum and shoot it over the top. There we go. So we have a beautiful little cocktail made with cannabis. I'm going to taste it. That is absolutely delicious. Taste that and tell me what you think. It's a lot greener
you say so.
tasting than the barrel. It's a lot greener tasting, but it's really alive. It's really it's vibrant.
The tonic is kind of it
lightens it up.
It feels like it's gonna be a little sweeter and a little heavier, and then it just kind of springs to life. It's kind of weird.
But it's a drink that you probably, you know, again, I'm going to take this and filter it, but it's not going to be as clear as gin would be.
It's got a little bitterness to it.
But it's got a little bitter edge to it. It's really, really nice. It's a nice way of building a cocktail in a way that you might not necessarily feel like you want to do it. I do have to stress certain legal points. You're probably not going to be doing this in your cocktail bar anytime soon unless you have it under the counter. I would not recommend saying, oh, I have the weed vodka here or the weed gin. I think that's a really bad idea and it sends the wrong impression. What I'm trying to achieve by writing my book was giving a different way of looking at ingredients that we're familiar with and using cannabis as a health tonic, as a health serum, if you will. My first book, Cannabis Cocktails, kind of touches on that. And the only ingredient that they really used in the early apothecary, which we don't really use today at all because of the public stigma against it, is cannabis. And cannabis was probably the only ingredient in the early apothecary that really worked. But they didn't know why it worked. But we know why it works. And we're rediscovering every day why it works and finding that it works all too well. So many of...
Is that what you're talking about?
Yeah, apothecary cocktails. There we are.
That.
Yeah, here's the book. So my first book, Apothecary Cocktails, was written, a couple years ago. And then of course, Cannabis Cocktails is meant to take you where Apothecary Cocktails left off. And certainly the ingredient that I did not include in Apothecary Cocktails was cannabis. Because I don't think America was ready for it yet. And I really don't think that they knew what was going on, and they knew that it had healing properties, and that people are starting to relax a little bit about the raw ingredients and not being quite so paranoid that it's going to lead to harder drugs. And I really wanted to stress very, very, very strongly that you don't want to drink more than one of these drinks per hour. It's not like you can sit down and pound 5 drinks in an hour and say, why isn't this hitting me? Because it takes a while, and everyone's body is different, and everyone assimilates cannabis in a different manner. And they want to make sure that they do things in a way that kind of it changes up the way that you feel about liquor. And you don't want to be drinking, power drinking anything with cannabis in it. And I tried to write the book from a perspective of healing. So I think that's very important to stress that you don't want to drink too much too quickly.
Do all cannabis-infused spirits louche when water is added?
Yeah, they do. They really do. They get a little bit creamy colored. The gin is probably not such a great example because I wasn't able to filter it. I didn't bring my coffee filters. And, so this is about 150 ml. And it probably, at the end of the process, would probably be about, 125 ml. A lot of it stays inside the coffee filter. But that doesn't necessarily mean just because it's unattractive, it doesn't have the active ingredients. It absolutely has the active ingredients. But so it does louche when you do put water in it. I infused a bottle of Cuvée Edouard, of the Edouard absinthe, and that came out just about as green and vegetal as you can imagine, and it had the most incredible aroma and flavor. But from an aesthetic point of view, it wasn't so great. In my experimentation, I found that whiskey or dark rum was the best thing to infuse because it really didn't show poorly. But light liquors like gin or vodka, not so much.
Warren, your amounts, 7 to 14 grams cannabis to 750 ml liquor, seems too high to me, no pun. Given the availability these days, what are the THC content ranges of the strains you're using?
The ones that I use run anywhere from 14% THC up to about 21% THC. You have to let your body be the guide. There is no written, I know I'm going to catch a lot of flack for this, but there's no written recipes. You have to kind of use my recipes as the starting point. And the reason for that is that my starting point was very, very light. Some of the recipes that I've seen on the internet have been incredibly potent. People have been taking as much as an ounce of cannabis per 750 ml bottle. I would do that as a tincture. I probably wouldn't do that as an infusion. In infusion, you don't want to have quite so much potency in any one drink. So although this is 150 ml of concentrated liquor, I might want to add this back into my bottle and then top it off, up to 750 ml. So it would be something like, it would go into the larger flask, and then I would top it off with gin, and I'd get it wouldn't be quite as concentrated. So once it comes out of the heat, it's quite concentrated.
I've got it. Will it be okay to use one of your recipes in a book in a review? They're really looking forward to the book.
So
do you give them permission to use one of your cocktail recipes in a review?
I absolutely give you permission to review my book and to do anything that you want with it. I would say give me a call or send me an email so I can get you in touch with my publisher so I can, get you a copy of it, of the book before it releases perhaps, or at least an e-copy so you have an idea of what I tried to write.
How many cocktails can I drink with cannabis and still be able to drive legally?
You probably would not want to drive legally when imbibing any cannabis cocktails. I would imagine that the same amounts of liquor, having just done my serve safe training, liquor's problematic and the cannabis makes it even more problematic. So I would say have someone else do the driving for you.
Have you done any tequila infusions?
Yeah, you know what? I actually
infusion question.
Tequila infusion question.
There you go.
Have I done any tequila infusions? In the book, I did mezcal infusions because I find that the mysterious nature of mezcal lends itself extremely well to the use of cannabis in cocktails. From a flavor perspective, absolutely. From an aroma perspective, absolutely. I couldn't tell you that if I had something the matter with me. I don't. But I couldn't tell you that it would cure this, or this. But what I can tell you is it may alleviate certain symptoms that you have. If you have glaucoma, for instance, I do know that cannabis acts as some sort of guide to relieving your difficulties with glaucoma. I know that people have certain types of seizures. Cannabis is able to alleviate certain types of seizures. There's like 400 different properties for healing. So I thought, why not take those positive things rather than the negative things and try to weave it into a cocktail. So any kind of liquor that you have, including the cream liquors, works very, very well. And the cream liquors actually work better because cannabis doesn't bind to water, it binds to a fatty substance. With that said, the infusion process that we do allows it to bind to the water. But if you did a cream-based liquor, or like a Bailey's Irish Cream or something, just saying, it would work really, really nicely because of the fact that it's a fatty substance. But mezcal works beautifully because it's mysterious. It's got the smoke. It has the char. It has, there's all these different types of mezcal from different villages. They all have their different flavors, and each type of cannabis is different as well. So you have, in my book, I have 75 different drinks. Each one has a different strain meant to heal or alleviate, they're meant to alleviate a certain ill or a certain complaint. But then at the end of the day, what we're trying to do is introduce new flavors, new smells, new aromas, new depth to your craft cocktails. Again, I don't recommend you doing this in the cocktail bar. You're on your own as far as that's concerned. People have asked me where to get weed. I say make friends with a teenager, or what was the other thing? Move to Colorado, get a medical, get a cannabis card in whatever state you live in where it's permitted. But I couldn't tell you that it's legal. It's not. I'm doing something that's on the periphery of badness. And I don't mean to be a bad person. I wanted to offer something that was different, and I hope I don't get into too much trouble along the way. But I don't think so. I really don't think so. I think times are changing, and I think that the perspective is to look for new flavors and new techniques as opposed to dwelling on the sticky little things like getting arrested.
Questioning how long does it take? How long does it take cannabis effect to kick in? Also, does it pair with the alcohol effect?
That's a great question, and I was hoping someone would ask me that. It takes, with the infusions, it takes approximately 10 to as much as an hour for it to hit you. And the other part of the question was?
How does it pair with the alcohol effect?
It pairs beautifully. In fact, it makes alcohol effect minimized. I can't believe I just said that, but it's true. It minimizes the effect of the alcohol. So you get a feeling that you can drink your buddies under the table, and you probably can, but I don't recommend it. And again, if you end up taking too much or overdosing yourself on cannabis, and you'll know it when you do it because it's like your worst nightmare, essentially. And you say that's why you want to really ratchet back the amounts, and definitely don't drink 5 drinks in an hour. And if you do, you drink that fresh squeezed lemon juice and chew the peppercorns and be relaxed. Be really relaxed, because like anything, you don't want to drink too much, and you certainly don't want to take too much cannabis, and you don't want to do anything in extreme. I come from the school of thought that you want to do everything in moderation. So you have your first drink, then you wait about an hour or so, and then you might have a second drink. But I really don't think of power drinking. I don't think that cannabis cocktails would necessarily be a good idea for shots. I think that sends the wrong image. We're not trying to portray that. Again, when I first took this idea to Anne, and I said, Anne, I'm thinking of writing this book, or I've written this book. What do you feel about it? And I do believe that Anne said very specifically, I don't know about this. But I really wanted to prove that it wasn't something to be afraid of. It was something to be challenged, in the sense that it offers flavors that we're just not accustomed to, and it offers techniques that we don't have the ability of saying, oh, I did that, because most people have not done this. I think there's a lot of fear involved with it, because people would think that, gosh, I've had a bad experience where I drank a drink and smoked a joint, and I've never felt so sick in my life. There is that possibility, but that's why in my recipes, I ratcheted back the intensities way, way, way back. And anyone with a half of a brain can see the book and look at the recipes and say, okay, if I really want to get wasted, what am I going to do? Everything's in here. You can do it. I don't recommend it, but it can be done. But really, the terminology for this book is healing, not obliteration. So that's really important. I had to make that, to stress that it was a book that was written on firm healing principles and properties and techniques, and make something that was pleasurable and not something that makes you completely wrecked, because that's just not what I do. I really drink very little as it is, and when I drink, I want to make sure it's something that I enjoy and something that I have fun with, and cannabis is the perfect vehicle for that. Any other questions that we have?
I've got more, unless you have.
I would love to go. We've made the cocktails, so we.
Well, the next question kind of pairs to what you just said. They're asking, are different strains of cannabis better, different with different types of spirits or cocktails?
Yeah,
and does your book go into that?
Right. The book does go into that. I have a whole section in the beginning on tasting notes. So I do flavor profiles of different cannabis strains. So I talk about the chemistry lessons, and then I say, now that we've gotten our chemistry lesson out of the way, let's turn our attention to the scents and flavors that makes each cannabis varietal unique. To date, thousands of strains of cannabis have been cultivated, and new ones are being developed so quickly that it seems that there's a new one on the market every day. Here's a brief guide including tasting notes, and I wrote the tasting notes like I write about whiskey or I write about rum or whatever. So you'll see very clearly. So it's my personal tasting notes to some of the best known strains, and I've also included some of my personal favorites. So the first one I talked about was Blue Dream, and I said I'm a big fan of Blue Dream, which is actually a combination of two strains, indica-based blueberry and sativa-based haze. Lots of folks notice its aromas and flavors of sweet blue fruits, though I'm more attuned to its spiciness and its burnt sugar overtones, which means it's wonderful in a hot toddy or when it's woven into the condensed milk in a cool Vietnamese-style iced coffee, like the one on page. Well, we hadn't put the pages in yet, but expect to feel relaxed yet clear-headed after enjoying it. So Blue Dream mixes well with bourbon, scotch, and well-aged rum. And the best time of day to use is evening or whenever you're ready for deep, full-body relaxation.
So I have scientific.
Yeah, it is. So I have another one here called BC Bud, and that's one of my favorites. Home for mostly the sativa hybrid is a British Columbian grown and best enjoyed at the source. But if that's not doable, never fear. I've been consistently impressed with BC Bud and its smooth, funky flavor whenever and wherever I've tried it. It's as sweet as candy on the nose, but not on the finish, where you get gobs of freshly crushed Caribbean spices, fire-driven Thai spices, wet stones, and charred cedar. BC Bud is just gorgeous when it's whipped into a mixture of butter and coconut oil, and when it's infused into a glycerin tincture. Both seem to magnify its fragrance and taste, not to mention its potency, 100-fold. Add it to apple ice wine, or to sorrel liquor, the one made by my friend Jack from Brooklyn. He's a good guy. And there's also, I did one with a pineapple kush. Pineapple, mint, and burnt sugar meet this mostly indica strain. Turn it into a tincture or mix it into a batch of canna butter and use it to medicate a hot cup of chamomile tea at the end of a long day. It can alleviate muscle spasms and may ease symptoms of stress and sleep disorders. In fact, in my experience, it'll even send the most ardent somnambulist straight to the land of Nod. As for cocktails, you can't do much better than adding a pineapple kush infused orgeat syrup to a zombie cocktail, combined with freshly squeezed orange juice and grapefruit juices, and a little bit of both light and dark rums.
So is it safe to have? Is it safe to say that cannabis makes you feel less drunk?
I absolutely believe that it makes you feel less drunk, and that's why it is a feeling. I can't tell you that I haven't blown through a breathalyzer to see what was going on.
Would it make you less drunk physically? So if you blew...
I don't know about the physical aspect. All I know is that you feel less drunk. I can't tell you what you are because everyone is different. And again, the amount that you take is very, very important, and you don't want to go overboard. It's so important not to go overboard. This is a pleasurable drink that can become a painful drink, and we don't want you to do that. So keep it light. Keep it really light. Another strain here that I love is the Thin Mint Cookie. And I say under the flavor profile, you won't believe that there's no cookie batter or mint chocolate chip ice cream in this hybrid sativa and indica strain. And I should explain a little bit. A sativa strain is more for day use, and indica strain is more for night use. It just happens to be the genetics and how it affects you. So you won't believe there's no cookie batter. It's bursting with sweet, spicy notes that makes it reminiscent of the Girl Scout cookie strain, which may be its ancestor. Infuse a great bottle of Bar Hill gin with thin mint cookie, and the honey notes in the gin marry so well with the sweet earthiness of the thin mint. And then mix yourself a minty, medicated gin and tonic. Or use the thin mint to make a batch of canna butter and add to a pat to a homemade hot chocolate. For an extra treat, top with a whisper of 160 proof rum and stir with a candy cane or a peppermint stick. Alternately, as the thin mint may reduce nausea, and you could always turn it into a tincture and add a few drops to a small bottle for aromatic bitters. After all, bitters have been used to remedy stomach ailments for centuries. So, aromatic bitters at one time probably contained cannabis in it. We know that aromatic bitters work on your stomach. We know if you have a stomach ache, it makes you feel better. I don't know what the original recipes held, but I know that cannabis was in most everything that came from the apothecary. So it stands to reason that my little guy Klaus here would be taking bitters when his stomach was bothering him. What do you think about that? Do we have any other questions?
Yep. What do you think of fresh grapefruit cannabis?
Fresh grapefruit.
Yeah, so that type of pairing.
Oh, that type of pairing, absolutely. In fact, I have the bitters here from Stone Cold. They're originals, and this is grapefruit and hops in bitters with a secret ingredient that they asked me not to mention.
They also, somebody asked if they left or they've heard a story of people leaving their discarded stems and all that in some liquid, and then over a couple of years it could...
Over a couple of years it would extract, and it would probably turn out to be the color of my gin. Pretty awful looking. I don't recommend doing it that method. I recommend decarbing with heat, and then you can do an infusion directly into a bottle of liquor, such as what I did right here with the barrel. And I did this under heat, and you can't see it in there, but there's a little bit of a haze from the cannabis that I used. And it just works so beautifully. And it makes such a great mint julep. I can't wait to make one of these for Derby Day. It'll be a very electrifying mint julep indeed.
One other pretty easy question. Are you going to be at Tales this year?
I am absolutely going to be at Tales this year. We're releasing cannabis cocktails. We're doing the rollout of cannabis cocktails at Tales, which is going to be really exciting. So come and get a copy. I'll love to sign it for you. I'll also have all my other 3 books there: Apothecary Cocktails, Whiskey Cocktails, and my current release, Bitters and Shrubs Syrup Cocktails.
Have you ever tried using other hallucinogens like salvia, mushrooms, peyote, etc.?
What, personally or in drinking?
I think the context would probably be in drinking.
In drinking, no. I haven't. I would say I'm afraid of those items because I think to a great degree they're uncontrollable. Everyone has a different effect. This is the most innocuous of the liquors, of the items that I use. I consider it to be pretty innocuous, but you can run into problems really quickly with things that you're not accustomed to, such as mushrooms or salvia. I don't need to trip. I did that a long time ago. I don't need to do that again. And quite frankly, I don't want to ever have to recommend that to anyone. It's not my style to do that. The book is about cannabis. It's not about mushrooms, and I have to make that determination.
Have you ever considered or heard maybe any documented people using cannabis for beer or other type of libations?
That's a great question. Hops and cannabis are part of the same genetic strand, I think it is. I don't know if it's genetics, but they mimic each other in smell. So I have heard of people brewing beer with cannabis. I couldn't tell you who they are. I know they're out there. I know because I've tried it. It's delicious stuff. It tends to be a little bit more of the hop profile than the cannabis profile, probably because people are doing it at home and they don't have like vast amounts of money to buy a bunch of weed, so they do it in small amounts. And so there isn't too much of any one flavor. But when you make, you can do a half bottle or a quarter bottle of gin or bourbon and make drinks for your friends and play around with it and do something that's a little bit different, and it definitely has a different effect. It's actually a very pleasurable effect, and a lot of the flavors that I taste and the feelings that I taste are very similar to the ones I taste when I smoke the stuff. And it's not always practical to smoke cannabis. It's you're walking through an airport, you probably wouldn't be holding a joint in your hand. I promise you that you would run into all kinds of trouble with that. But if you had your New Orleans Go Cup in your hand and it was filled with a little bit of bourbon whiskey and a tincture or bitters or whatever. You could be medicating yourself while enjoying a carefully made craft cocktail. It's up to you. I mean, I don't want to tell you what to do, and all I can do is give you the tools and the ideas to make something that's quite delicious. But it's something, people didn't always know what bitters were. They were like, what are those funky little bottles on the bar? What do they do? Well, they add depth, they add balance, they add flavor, they add quality. But back in the day, they were used to heal a sour stomach. I mean, people didn't live too long. There wasn't electricity. There wasn't a way of purifying water, and they would use their aromatic bitters when they had a stomach ache to feel better or worse. But that's pretty much it with that one.
Any specific spirits that you find would be your favorite to pair against?
Bourbon, of course, is absolutely one of my favorites. Well, first off, the color is pretty good. You have the color of bourbon whiskey. It doesn't look like it's like this, which is pretty awful. I'm not proud of how this came out, but I am very proud with how this came out. And I guess the reason why I'm not proud about how the gin came out is because I knew it was going to look kind of greenish, but I didn't realize it was going to be quite so brownish green. And I think a lot of it has to do with the fact that I decarbed my cannabis in the microwave. I did 3 sets of 1:30 each, and in the final set, it got a little bit too toasty. I don't think it'll be too toasty in the effect, but I just think from a color perspective, it wasn't that great.
You always have to store your cannabis infusions of any, are there specific ones that you'd have to store in the refrigerator versus left out like alcohol?
That's a really good question. I always leave them out. The ones that I'm doing with 80 proof spirits or above, this one actually has 122, actually it's 123 or something. No, wait, 124.7, I apologize, 124.7 proof. It's going nowhere. You put that in the back of your bar, nothing's going to happen to it. If anything, it's going to get better over time, but not over 30 years. Right. I think 30 years is just about the maximum.
But if you just used a bottle of vodka or whatever?
Vodka, 80 proof vodka is fine. You don't want to refrigerate it, or you can put it in your freezer. I don't think it's going to affect it any. But really, at the end of the day, what's happening here is it's something that's shelf stable. You don't need to throw it in the refrigerator unless it's a milk product. And I do all of my milk products in the refrigerator.
What about cannabis and winemaking?
There is someone who's doing this. Very interesting question. Melissa Etheridge, who is the musician, owns a company called Fog City Collectives out in the Bay Area. And she takes, or her winemaker, takes the finest Napa Valley Cabernet Sauvignon and mix it with the finest Humboldt County Sinsemilla. They decarb and they age it in cask for a year, I believe, or a period of time. And then they filter it and they bottle it. It's only available out on the West Coast as far as I know, but it's a really, really well-made product, and I'm sure that it does everything that it's meant to do, and then some.
This one kind of goes back to your remedy there, with the lemon peppercorn recommendation. They'd like to understand, can you talk a bit about that? Understand the chemistry behind why that would do something?
I'm not a chemist, and I would like to be able to say that directly up front. This just happens to be a method that was taught to me by someone who is a chemist, or is someone who's well respected within the field of the biochemistry of cannabis. So I make no representation. I'm not a doctor, nor am I a chemist. I may have these fancy Erlenmeyer flasks, but it just makes things easier when you're doing stuff with temperature or with heat. They don't break quite as easily. It's a nicer thing to do. But I kind of got sidetracked. What was
there's actually a separate part of the question, which is from another person who asked. The first part was the same. Mm-hmm. Do you have to chew the peppercorns, or can you be cracked?
Yeah, the peppercorns should be chewed. I think it's something to do with the saliva stimulation in your body. It gets in under your tongue, and it absorbs into your body quicker, and then you chase it down with a glass of freshly squeezed lemonade. I don't know how it works. I'm not quite sure I want to know how it works, but I will tell you it does work. Like everything in my book, I'm not a chemist. I'm not like, some of the people in our business who are doing molecular drinks and creating, like my mentor, he does all sorts of cool stuff with agars and really just weigh out techniques that myself as a kind of a straight bartender, and I do, simple drinks and not a whole lot of mumbo jumbo to them. But that doesn't necessarily make me a bad person or anyone else a better person. What it does is I'm doing something that's simple, easy to do, and almost anyone can do it. If you get a nice, supply of the raw ingredients, there's no reason why you can't make a delicious cannabis cocktail. If you don't have the raw ingredients, you can still make a nice cocktail. It's 75 brand new recipes for delicious drinks that I created myself.
There
was
something
a
about
legality.
It was more of a comment, like if you moved to California, you might
Right.
be able to get away with this better.
Yeah, but I don't think it's going to be in a cocktail lounge anytime soon, and I'm really sorry to say that. I wish that there was some way that someone could do an activated liquor with cannabis in it. There are products on the market. They call them, there's like a vodka out on the market which is supposed to be made with hemp. It doesn't have any effect. It doesn't even taste like what mine tastes like. Mine tastes like freshly crushed, great high quality cannabis, because I always use great high quality cannabis. So it's going to taste and it's going to smell like $1,000,000. But there's nothing worse than using bad quality cannabis, because your end result is going to turn out poor. I try to only use the highest quality liquors when I'm making my infusions, because I don't want to drink bottom shelf. I want to drink top shelf. When people send me bottles of liquor, like the barrel bourbon sitting in front of here, I don't necessarily sit down and want to drink an entire bottle of bourbon. I'm not going to drink it in one sitting, of course, but it's been a long time since I've finished an entire bottle of whiskey. But I may be more inclined to drink a bottle of whiskey having known that I had infused it with something really incredible, and in this case it's a strain called OG Kush. So it's really, really nice quality cannabis, tastes great with the bourbon, mixes like a charm, and it gives you a nice little effect too.
Once you've infused the alcohol, say bourbon with cannabis, would it be beneficial to fat wash the same bourbon with cannabis butter with it to make?
Yeah, you could fat wash it. That's again one of those molecular ideas that I, when I was a chef and I trained to be a chef from dishwasher on up, we didn't have techniques like fat washing, so I'm not really quite sure how it works. I do know it works. I think that technique would work. I have not experimented with it, but I did do a whole lot of recipes with canna butter. One of my favorites in the book, of course, was the hot buttered rum, because it's just so simple. It's I make it with hot tea, black tea or chai tea. I heat the milk so it has a nice character and depth to it. I do all sorts of things with it, and then I just preheat a mug and I put the pat of butter up on top of the mug, and it works out perfectly. It's just delicious, and it tastes green, but it tastes spicy, but it tastes like chai tea if you use chai tea, and it tastes delicious. And I think that it's an easy drink for beginners, and it's one that's only as difficult as brewing up a cup of tea and putting the can of butter on top, and that's all you need to do. It's that easy. This book doesn't have a whole lot of I'm not trying to overly intellectualize it. I wanted to create something that was simply written, that everyone could appreciate and enjoy it. I just saw a question. Have I tried infusing cognac or brandies? I actually tried some Calvados recently, and the Calvados came out beautifully. Yeah, there's some questions over there.
Okay, I thought I got all those.
No, I guess not. But yeah, I did Calvados. Cognac, I don't have any samples at home, hint, hint. So I guess that means that someone should send me some cognac, and I'd be glad to experiment with it, because I was not going to go out and spend $100 for a bottle of cognac and have it turn out lousy. I want to make sure it came out perfectly. And I haven't, I don't drink a whole lot of inexpensive brandy, but I probably would say an Armagnac might be a good thing, but I haven't gotten to it yet. Writing the book is not just something that happens overnight, and the experimentation process was not always so easy, because there wasn't always the adaptability. Getting the raw ingredients was not always easy for me. So when I did all my experimentations, it was a problematic testing. But I do know that everything did test out correctly, and thus the book tests out perfectly.
So this book, is it going to be available in Europe, do you know?
It'll be available in Europe. It'll be translated evidently into French and Dutch. It'll be available all over Europe. and pretty much the world on Amazon and Barnes & Noble, and then of course your indie bookstores. And then if you sign up through Tales, I guess they were giving away a book as well, which was very nice. We appreciate that greatly. And then of course I'll be at Tales signing my book away.
So is that, are you going to do any type of book tour, or is...
Yes, there will be a book tour, but there will not be any active substances on the book tour. Sorry.
Oh, you think they're just trying to get away with a couple free samples?
Yeah, a couple free samples, and who knows who I might be pouring a cocktail for. I don't want to have that problem.
But I think we've got pretty much all of them. What the Tales crew said is anything you guys want to ask Warren after the episode, you can go to their Facebook page and put it in the comments. You'll probably find this video embedded there. And the last question that I've been saving, actually the first question is, can we get the presentation? You know, of course you can. You can get the presentation.
Of course you can get the presentation. Absolutely.
It's all going to be available through the Tales 365.
Yes, and there will be a playback in a couple days or a week or so. They do a playback, which is really nice. And then I'll always be famous, or infamous, as it is.
You've got 2 minutes. Anything you want to close with?
Anything I want to close with? I say experiment. Let your body be the guide. If you feel like you're not getting the effect that you're looking for after a half hour or 45 minutes or so, make yourself another cocktail if you like. If you've had too much, you'll know it pretty quickly. But each of the strains has its own effect, and I really find that to be kind of interesting, especially from a culinary standpoint, because there's been so many books written about cannabis and cooking, but really this is the first book to be written on cannabis and cocktails. So why not? I mean, there's all the possibilities for flavor in the world, and it was great. And there it is. I was awesome. Thank you very much. Thanks, Carrie. I think that's Carrie over there. You gave the. That was nice. Awesome.
Of course,
I don't know if I'm awesome. I'm okay.
And there's the obvious disclaimer that if you can't do this in your state, don't.
Yeah, don't, because it is illegal. The other thing is, don't take on a new health regimen without consulting your doctor first. First and foremost, I am not a doctor. I am not prescribing this to you. I'm not recommending that it heals anything in specific, but I will tell you that it does alleviate certain ills.
All right, anything else?
That's it.
All right, folks, I guess we're done.
Thanks.